Retail sales surged last month following a disappointing start to the year. They rose by 5.6% compared with April 2016, thanks largely to higher spending over the late Easter holidays. Well, that figure contrasted with a 1% fall in March. But the British Retail Consortium also warned that there are likely to be tough times ahead. Helen Dickinson is the BRC's chief executive and joins me now. So, Helen, clearly sales went off a cliff in March. Was this all down to the timing of Easter?
Pretty much. I mean, on the face of it, April's figures look quite fantastic, but underneath it all is not quite as good as it looks on the it says on the tin. So the majority of that growth was really driven by the timing of Easter. So Easter fell in April 2017, but is not in April 2016, which is what we're comparing against.
And when we've had these mid-April Easters in recent years, 2011, 2014, we saw a sharp fall-off in May generally. Do you anticipate that happening again this time?
I think what's important is that we sort of look at the underlying trend over a series of months. And what we've seen at the end of last year and the beginning of this year is fairly sluggish retail sales growth as consumers are just holding back a bit. They're a little bit worried about inflation, and particularly given that wage growth is also slow. So it's their disposable income, the money in their pockets, that's really going to drive what happens as we go forward. And
the interesting thing is, food sales seem to be holding up. That lack of disposable income seems to be hitting non-food.
Yeah, I think what we're actually seeing is, there are inflationary pressures building in the pipeline, if you like, and they're probably feeding through a little bit more quickly into food. So we've still got falling shop prices, even though headline inflation is rising, but actually it's food prices, commodity prices feeding into the prices that we're paying into shops that's just starting to tip over, and that's diverging the food sales, showing them improving slightly more than in non-food.
Now, we've got to wait for a while for the parties to publish their manifestos. You've published yours. What are you hoping to hear from the politicians? Yeah,
our policy ask document called Pioneers, we published that last week, and there were two areas really in there. The first is to put UK consumers at the centre of the Brexit negotiations, because given those pricing pressures, making sure that we have no new tariffs on goods that are imported into this country is going to be really important for UK consumers, particularly as over 3/4 of the food that we import comes from the EU, and that we look at that before seizing some of the opportunities around the rest of the world to do new trade deals.
So how confident are you, though, that we're going to get a frictionless set of negotiations post-Brexit?
I think, what's important is that there's a sort of orderly and sequenced process, and I think that we need to have a plan that includes a transitional implementation phase, whatever we might want to call it, to ensure there's no cliff edge, and that when we're thinking about trade, we're thinking about imports as well as exports.
Which I guess could happen now that the timing of the election, the next election is being kicked into the future.
Indeed. And I think, what's also important is that we're looking at the priorities for the domestic agenda as well as the Brexit negotiations. So obviously business as usual has got to continue here, and so we've really highlighted a couple of things around looking at the business taxation system, particularly fundamental reform of business rates. We have a tax system that's not really fit for purpose in the 21st century, and also ensuring that the UK can maintain its world-leading position around e-commerce. So that's needs the acceleration of investment into digital infrastructure.